To prepare for the Tower of Estrod, we purchase some consumables. First, from Visily Ratimus, we buy a scroll of protection from fire. The main enemy spellcaster in the tower uses Fireball, and this will absorb the damage. We also pick up 2 scrolls of Delay Poison, handy since dredge stinking clouds can be a real nuisance. Even if we don't use them in a tower, we'll find use for them later on. There is no scroll of Fairy Fire available, which is part of why I prioritized learning it over Delay Poison in my own spellbook. Both Protection from Fire and Delay Poison are on the Hunter spell list, so we do not need use Magic Device to use the scrolls. Next, from Gemel Hawks, we pick up a potion of invisibility in case we need to disengage or pass a stealth check. The potion gives a +20 bonus, which all but guarantees success, especially since our stealth is already quite high. I buy 2, keeping 1 in reserve. We are planning to stop by the atelier first. On the way, we get ambushed, but this time we succeed on the stealth check. Succeeding the stealth check is a big deal. It allows one to pre-buff if one chooses to, which will become increasingly important later, as buffs play a larger role in fights. It also lets one initiate combat, giving one the first strike against flat-footed opponents. Finally, it gives one the option to just leave after scouting the enemy and finding them to be too strong. Not the case here, even pre-buffing wasn't necessary. For the fight outside the atelier, we make use of the Dark Veil. We won't be needing it for the Tower of Estrod, so there's no reason to save it. The Veil allows us to temporarily ignore the Sharpshooter and instead focus on the Wizard and the Barbarian, both of whom are dangerous in their own right. The Wizard has ranged attack, Magic Missile, which the Veil does not block, and the Barbarian is fast, making them difficult to kite. That said, we should have prioritized the Sharpshooter over the Fighter. The Dark Veil halves the chance to be hit by ranged attacks, not eliminate it entirely. Thus, the Sharpshooter remains more dangerous than the slow-moving Fighter. We do not enter the atelier itself at this point. The fight is not one we can handle right now. After leaving, I realize I forgot to activate Animal Focus Owl, so I re-enter the dungeon. While thinking about the upcoming Tower of Estrod fight, I mistakenly buff myself with Longstrider instead, which forces a reload. Upon arrival, we receive the angelic aspect of from one of the visions. We gain this because we selected the angel option prior to the Oscilla fight. Had we chosen demon instead, one of the visions would have attacked us. Angelic aspect grants us many benefits, but the most important benefit here is the acid resistance. The caster in the upcoming fight has Acid Arrow. Acid Arrow deals multiple small instances of damage, which makes resistance, being a flat reduction, especially good against it. We also take a moment to examine the paintings. We see here many of the characters we end up meeting later in the game. A Halrun we already met. His portrait has been vandalized, likely by cultists, though he's made plenty of enemies. Here we have the Queen. Janiel, we got her sword in the prologue if you remember, and we'll also be meeting her later on. A Hand of the Inheritor, or Inheribro as some people like to call him. Another shows Darren and his mother. And there is one more, a dramatic battle between angels and demons. And let's take a closer look. It might be taking place high above, hidden in the clouds. Moving on, we run into Greybor, who invites us to witness an argument between the cultists we are about to fight. The cultists in question are Kylus, a Greybor's target and a member of the Deskari cultist faction, and Vaxon, a Templar of the Ivory Labyrinth. Infighting between the Wonic factions is a reoccurring theme throughout the game. If you arrive after the assault on Defender's Hearth, Greybor will already have completed his assassination and left. You would also be forced into a dialogue with Vaxon immediately upon entering, preventing many of the shenanigans we are about to engage in. Let's take a look at the battlefield. Kylus will be assassinated by Greybor at the start of the encounter. Greybor will then dip. Vaxon is the aforementioned spellcaster, specifically a witch, who uses 3 acid arrows and 1 fireball. Once he runs out of spells, he switches to a fire mace. As a side note, this weapon can be looted off his corpse upon his death. It's a decent secondary weapon for melee characters. It deals both bludgeoning and fire damage, generally effective against enemies' resistance to slashing and piercing, such as the rat swarms in the market square. To make the fight easier, one can push 2 pillars that deal area damage when collapsed. The percent chances I've written are based on an athletic score of 9 and a mobility of 11. The skill check to push the left pillar can only be attempted once, and the skill check to push the right pillar can be attempted as many times as needed. To reach the left pillar, we need to pass a single athletics check to climb up this ledge. Fortunately, that check is repeatable as well. Before attempting the athletics check for pushing the left pillar, we enter stealth. Without this, the falling pillar would immediately trigger combat. With stealth active, only Greybor's assassination triggers, we remain undetected. This does not require passing a stealth check, as we're outside enemy detection range.
There's something over there. No.
As far as I know, enemy detection radius is typically slightly less than 30 feet, the range of point-blank shot or short-range spells, but this can vary by enemy type. What's shown here is a rough estimate for this fight. If anyone has more detailed information on enemy detection mechanics, I'd very much welcome it. To reach the second pillar without needing a stealth check, we must jump a gap. Failing this check drops us into a lower area, placing us in detection range regardless of whether we continue or retreat. My plan, which works regardless of whether I succeed or fail the jump, is to lure as many surviving enemies as possible to the second pillar and then push it. A complication: the cultists and Templars typically spend their first turn buffing. This delays their movement, meaning they won't follow me towards the pillar in time. To solve this, I trigger combat, then disengage by retreating far enough to break aggro. Alternatively, using an invisibility potion would also work. Since enemies spend their spells during this first encounter, they will follow me in the second one, either because they are still buffed or because they're out of spells. Before attempting to jump, we again enter stealth mode. Without it, we are detected on failure. I succeed on the gap jump. I had previously tested the scenario and found that with Longstrider, we succeed with the lure even if we fail the jump and fall down. Because of this, I actually try to fail deliberately to repeat this already tested route. But after succeeding twice more, I started feeling silly and proceeded to the pillar directly, which was likely the safer approach anyways.
This is come at me.
I get detected just before manually revealing myself and lure the enemies into the ideal position. At the last possible moment, we drink an invisibility potion. And now we can safely try to push the pillar as many times as needed. With plus 20 to stealth, we are unlikely to be detected. The trap is a complete success. All enemies except Faxon are killed. I decide to conserve my scroll protection, but still buff before facing Faxon, since I plan to rest back at Defender's Hearth anyway. An alternative would have been to save the buffs and use a Scroll of Restoration to counteract fatigue, allowing me to delay resting a bit longer. Completing the fight earns us a level. Despite being a human forester with decent intelligence and therefore having access to a very solid number of skill points, we still have more desirable skills than we are able to invest in. One of the downsides of playing solo. For the feat, we take Skill Focus Arcana. It's a prerequisite for unlocking the Lore Master Besties class. I prioritize Arcana over World for two reasons. First, there are several important Arcana checks in Act 1 that I want to succeed. Second, I plan to have my Trickster handle item identification later, due to a specific mythic trick I'll be taking down the line. We also unlock level 2 spells. The ones we pick are Cat's Grace and Sense Vitals. Sense Vitals is strong, but the duration is short and our spell slots are limited at this stage, so we won't be using it frequently for now. Picking the good alignment option and saving Telmer in the Tower of Estrod basement prevents him from destroying an important letter. Reading the letter reveals the locations of several secret potion caches left behind by his master, Zentir Bang. The first is found right here in the Tower of Estrod itself. Additional stashes can be found later in the Citadel of Dresden and the Ivory Sanctum. Further on, we encounter Teldon, apprentice to the late great Zacharias. Seeing Zacharias referenced repeatedly in the early game is one of the more enjoyable aspects of a replay. Teldon has a key that unlocks several rooms full of loot. There's a lot of good loot to be found here. The most notable is Lady Calandra's chain shirt, light armor with high armor class for this stage of the game. We won't be using it ourselves, as it pushes us into medium encumbrance and thus lowers our movement speed. However, it's worth holding on to for a future tank companion. The rest of the items we will sell. Upon exiting, I decide to use the exit loot window to collect all items and drop them near the entrance for easy pickup later. However, using the collect all button was a mistake. I should have clicked on each item manually, as I had done earlier in the prologue. As simply entering the world map while over-encumbered caused the fatigue condition. Normally this would happen only upon reaching the tavern. We've returned to Defender's Hearth without incident and complete the quest by speaking with Irabeth. Unfortunately, we don't receive increased experience for this final stage, since the hand-in occurs at base where all companions are automatically present.